Hey everyone, a little word to the wise. There is a smidgen of cursing in this episode, despite my best efforts, but hey, never claimed I was a good person.
Welcome to Electric Libertyland, here on the Lions of Liberty podcast, your weekly shot of culture, comedy, and liberty with your host, Brian McWilliams.
Hey everybody, welcome to Electric Libertyland out there in Libertyville, Libertyland, adjacent, separate but equal. Guys, this is show 11. So you know what that means. You can go to lionsofliberty.com/ELL11 for all of the show notes on the program today. Also, guys, want to remind you, check out Monday's shows with Mark Claire doing in-depth interviews, Fridays, Felony Fridays with John Odermatt. And a reminder that we've got a support program that you can now go and throw money at us, shower us in your pennies and nickels. Don't throw them too hard. Just drop them gently from your hand. But you can go and support the podcast at lionsofliberty.com/support. And of course, check out the t-shirts we've got now at lionsofliberty.store. There you have it. So I got with me today, guys, a good buddy of mine, a fellow comedian. He's a writer, but more importantly, if you can, arguably, laughter is the most important thing that we've got in this lifetime. But more importantly for our show today, also a board member at MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. My buddy Matt Neal. What's up, Matt? Welcome to the show.
Yo, thanks, Brian. Wow, you have a very good radio voice, I think. Like podcast voice.
Yeah, man.
You sound good.
It takes a lot of practice. You know what it is? Mostly is I yell a lot out windows at people. And you really pick up a lot when you're screaming out the windows, your own opinions and thoughts, curses at people. Right. It translates directly to podcasting.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. I enjoy it.
Yeah, good. Well, yeah. You and I have gone, you've enjoyed this for years. See, Matt and I, a little back history, guys. Matt and I have co-hosted and co-founded a comedy show we do out here in Los Angeles for over 3 years now, right?
Yeah, pretty amazing 3-year run. It's quite astounding to do something like that, I think, in this town and have people still like it.
Yeah, well, they show up anyway. Whether or not they like it is still debatable.
Somebody likes it.
Somebody out there.
That one guy, he comes back every month.
Yeah. Oh, he does. It's adorable. He's probably got nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
Homeless.
Sad.
So, Matt and I, Matt's obviously a fellow comedian, as I said. So, hopefully he brings some funny in here to our conversations about drug use. I mean, what can you do funny with drug use conversations, right? Nothing to talk about.
It's interesting. I've had this weird ride to here, to be so lucky to be with you here today. And, it's a weird ride when you think about it, when you think of like I find myself in positions with the MAPS thing where I'm just like, wow, this is a crazy circumstance. You start to meet people like icons of psychedelic culture and people who were around the origins of psychedelic culture and artists that are involved, and they're all amazing people. And
name names.
Oh Christ! Okay, let's see. Alex Gray is the one that comes to mind. So the artist Alex Gray, he's paints these amazing images of what you see when you're on psychedelics, but can't possibly describe to someone adequately. Really? Somehow he brings it back and is able to paint it. And
did he create the magic eye photos? is that Alan Gray or Alex Gray?
Alex Gray, yeah. Yeah, but I mean, mainly Rick Doblin, who started MAPS, is an amazing guy on his own. So to hang around with him is pretty interesting. He's a very deep thinker, and he always seems to be on the right side of history and really thinking about things in a unique way. And he's an icon. I mean, started a nonprofit to legalize MDMA as a medicine.
That's that's a tough one to sell.
Yeah,
especially like when you're just starting out before you've got a lot more. Well, I'm presuming he has a good amount of research behind him too when he first started, and it wasn't just like, dude, I tripped balls one time and I felt great. I think the world should feel great. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting how it's grown and in conjunction, thankfully, with the advancement of medical marijuana as a viable treatment of things for different things. It's very encouraging because as we saw, if this was in January, MAPS put out this press release, but you guys just received this approval from the FDA to go into phase 3 trials for MDMA assisted psychotherapy for PTSD. And I mean, I know that's something where the impact is incredibly far ranging. And you being on the board of directors, I'm sure you had a bit of say as far as how things went, and give me a little bit of insight into what's been behind this and kind of the conversations. Don't give anything away you can't give away, but what goes on in that boardroom when you're talking about this type of things and the battles that you faced. Because you had mentioned to me kind of this. One of the biggest battles is perception versus reality and this propaganda war that's constantly being fought against you. So I'm curious to hear a lot about that.
Yeah. So, I've only been around since the formation of the Public Benefit Corporation, as far as being a board member. So I'm a board member of the Public Benefit Corp. MAPS.org has been around since 1986. And I mean, their biggest issue really is, and what they're doing is a beautiful thing. So Rick his mission has been to bring all this science and do it the right way, take it through the hoops of the FDA and the path that all other medicines need to go through to become something you can get prescribed. So he's doing everything above board the right way, out in the open, following the rules, and that is extremely expensive to do. So, as a nonprofit, their main issue is the funding. And now that we get to this point where we're going to do clinical trials, it's going to cost I bet I've seen $17 million, like in that range, to take this through phase 3, which is bigger human trials. And it's big money for a nonprofit. It's an incredible amount of money, and I think when you look at the results of their studies, and it's all available on maps.org. There's been some awesome articles recently in the New York Times and the New Yorker. Just this past week, there was one in Rolling Stone.
Which I will link to in the show notes. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. That Rolling Stone piece was really interesting. God. Yeah. Fantastic piece. Very well researched. So I will definitely link to that. And by the way, real quick question. Have you guys talked about, and we're going to get into a little bit of Trump stuff a little later, depending on how much time we have, but has that come up as well? You talked about the expenses involved. And I know this from doing in my PR work, working with some companies that were consultancies to smaller pharma companies. Yeah, the insane costs involved with dealing with the FDA. So, does MAPS find itself in an odd position there, where on one side you've got dickheads like Jeff Sessions, and then on the other side you've got Trump talking about making it easier to get drugs through and streamlining the FDA and trying to make it more easy for people to access these life-saving treatments. So it's an interesting dichotomy that goes on.
Well, let me dissect that a little bit, because it's important, I think, to keep it clear. So the money and the cost is not like the FDA holding out their hand saying, give us 17 million and then we'll get you through the hoops. It's like one of the most rigorous, ridiculously gigantically carefully done things that we do. Like the FDA does, in my estimation, in like 20 years in the industry, like a really thorough job to keep people safe. They really do. But there's like the cost of doing the trial and the overhead of doing the trial in the name of safety, over protection in a lot of ways, in some cases, depending on the product. And in other cases, I mean, it's a crazy thing, but it's not so simple as like the money just needs to be there. But like, it's crazy to go through the hoops to protect people, but you wouldn't want it any other way, kind of. Yeah. I don't know how you're going to stream, like, so for Trump to take, like, it's dangerous to just say, oh, we're going to cut all this regulation, because what they're basically saying is don't spend 10 or 15 years proving as best you can with as much scientific evidence as you possibly can afford to do within reason to assume that it's safe and effective. Don't do that, because once 1 million people take it, we'll find out. And that seems to be the idea. I mean, that goes back to like the reason the FDA exists at all was, I believe, like the thalidomide crisis really like brought it to the fore that like, holy shit, you just can't put these things out into the public because, so there's the rigor's good, but any government agency is probably not as efficient as it could be. Right.
Well, yeah, I think there's definitely ways that you could streamline the process, though. I mean, there's a lot of cronyism that goes on. There's a lot of regulations that are put into place, I think, that slow down or prohibit a lot of people from getting into the pharma industry with competing products, that side of thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a little bit, I would say it's a bit too rigorous. And yes, I know it sounds a little callous to say, oh, well, these people's lives on the lines, but I do think where it gets a little bit too far gone in just how safe it has to be proved to be before it gets to market. And then even then, you're still going to get people that are going to have bad reactions to it. You still might have unforeseen consequences. So it seems like you have to weigh the risk reward. And unless you have something that is going to kill off a mass amount of people, it looks like, this treatment, if this treatment could save 50,000 people a year, meanwhile, we might lose 60 people for, maybe we don't do one more test or something like that that's going to take another 3 years. I can see where the risk reward would be a benefit overall.
Well, so interesting you bring that up, because they do have mechanisms to streamline shit already. Like they already have that. There's things called breakthrough therapy, which actually is that situation where it's like, look, this seems to be safe. This seems to have done its job. You've proved that in a small sample, it's good to go. And I mean, in this one, in MDMA, assisted psychotherapy for PTSD, in this protocol that we're taking through right now, that kind of thing is like incredible for the agency to work with you and say, we suggest you do this because there's so much dire need, right? So that's really interesting, and that would save a lot of money and time and get it through faster. But they already have these mechanisms to do that when that case arises. So.
Well, I know there's one.
It's not that bad, but it's also not perfect, because what you'd want to really do is get to the data faster, find out information faster. What's really blocking it up is a lot of administrivia, and like privacy is a huge issue. So you can't really use the data like you would if it was, like Facebook algorithms and Google data. They can use that to create a lot of amazing inferences, right? But it's like you're giving them that information, so your privacy kind of goes away. When it comes to medical stuff, it's a whole different deal. So in a lot of ways, we're a little too rigorous, but then there's privacy comes in. It's a crazy menagerie, honestly.
Yeah. Well, we're going a little bit off topic here, as is wont to happen on this show, by the way. But one of the things I've always been fighting for too, is especially in regards to the FDA and for testing of drugs, is that it be deregulated to the point where if people want to volunteer and sign a waiver, they should be able to just go ahead and do these tests without having to get, all of these steps for approval. Now with MDMA trials, that's going to be probably less impactful than some other, or not less impactful, but more. It's not like taking a cancer drug that's literally radioactive and injecting it. And just saying I'm fine with the consequences of it. But I feel like that could speed things up so much more if people had this voluntary ability and these companies were able and permitted by the FDA to say, look, we're going to you're going to leapfrog here and do human trials. We've got, X number of people who are willing to try it, and got to get that sign off to move it forward at a much faster pace.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I'm on the fence. I definitely have seen enough to be like somewhere in the middle, but to just cut stuff, I feel like is a bad idea, for sure. Like it's not that simple, to unwind it. And I think, MDMA is a weird example because there's so much, sort of evidence in the public that millions of people have taken it and they're pretty good, right?
Right. Yeah.
So you have this gigantic sample, and there's years and years and years of data that happened before it got put on Schedule 1, where they already saw its psychological benefits, and it all got Schedule 1 and it all shut down.
Well, do you think it got Schedule 1 because of the association of MDMA with ecstasy and that whole thing where ecstasy was mixed, and then because it's not regulated, it got street drugged out, or I'd say not because it's not regulated, because it's not above the level where it's out of the open. So it's all black market, it's all unreliable quantities, and you don't know what it's mixed with. And this is kind of, I think what you were mentioning earlier, is that it gets this bad rap because ecstasy, in so many people's minds that don't necessarily do the drug, associate the two, when ecstasy half the time is mixed with heroin and meth and horse tranquilizers and baby shit and whatever the fuck else is out there.
Yeah, you don't know what you're getting. There's amphetamines and all kinds of stuff mixed in there that you don't know what you're getting, and you're out dancing and you dehydrate. It's not a good test. So the scientific method is beautiful in that way. So you kind of like the idea of putting it through some sort of rigor, finding out what's going on, publishing that information, getting like gates along the way, and then here we go. But a big part of this is not even the drug. It's the drug plus the therapy.
Right.
And it's a 3-month course. It's not like you get, a lot of people also think, they're going to get legalized MDMA. You'll be able to go to CVS and get 38 pills of MDMA and go home. That is not it at all. Like, you only take the drug 3 times over 3 months, and you're doing all kinds of therapy and intensive conversations, and they call it integration, with people who are trained for this very situation. It's amazing stuff. I mean, just amazing. And so it's neat to be a part of that and watch it as it goes, because we're doing something that's really never been done before. When it all got shut down, there was real quiet on that front for a long time, and Rick resurrected it and created this beautiful thing that's been going now for more than 30 years. And
well, tell us a little bit about, I was reading this Rolling Stone article. So can you go in a little bit about, specifically how people are using it and how it's, what the impact is? Obviously, this is for PTSD, but it has even broader ranging impact on that, like for people that are just getting impacted with depression and stuff along those lines as well, correct?
Yeah, I mean, obviously and the way that like sort of drugs work is you get an indication for the drug. So we would get the indication of, if you specifically meet the criteria that was studied, you can get the treatment. But I mean, the idea is that in the long term, the idea is that this becomes the way we deal with these things. The integrated therapy, the drug that allows you to be open to the therapy, sort of in a weird way. Like in that article, she describes how you just kind of can deal with things a little bit differently than you could before. It's incredible stuff. I mean, the more healthy people that we have mentally, the better we're going to be as a society. And when you have these sort of innocuous in the long term, I mean, psychologically difficult to deal with for people who are suffering, obviously, but basically harmless-ish substances that have been used for thousands of years in a lot of ways, when you talk about the plant medicines. And it's just like, why are we doing this? Why are we letting people suffer?
Right.
It just seems crazy.
Well, I think it's
so it's nice to have the science.
Oh, definitely. Well, and it's just what fascinated me too is reading about the experiences these people are having, where they're doing, basically they're doing a lot of MDMA, like a lot. Like you said, it's like once a month. You're not popping them every day. So you do the once, and then you do the therapy. But what was so interesting to me was how it was opening up people's minds, and not opening them up like, in a hippy dippy way where you're like, oh man, I saw God for a day, but more just in the way that people had so much introspective ability when it comes to MDMA and dealing with really repressed issues that nobody wants to look at head on, but it gives them an ability to cope and realize certain things that they may have been hiding or stressing about that they're not willing to face.
Man.
And that really gives them the ability to look at that. And then by that, you are able to break on through to the other side.
And the thing is it's like a permanent-ish fix. Like, you get the tools to think differently.
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't go away. You don't need MDMA again to realize it anymore. It's like just an ego destroying, empathy increasing, whatever it is, whatever mix it's working on your serotonin level or whatever it's doing is changing and giving you the ability to think clearly and objectively about a lot of stuff. So like take some trauma that has been fucking with you your whole life and made you a certain way your whole life. And if you really look at the situation as an adult, let's say something happened to you when you were a kid, you had a trauma when you were a kid, and your whole life has been, just jacked up as a result. Maybe you can't have a relationship, or you can't hold down a job, or whatever. You have this thing that's just been messing with you your entire life, traced to when you were 7 years old. And for the first time in your life, you really examine it now as an adult, and you go, you know what? Even though that was bad, I survived. It wasn't my fault. And I can just leave that alone now and not let it influence the rest of my life.
Yeah, it's funny. They call drugs an escape. And yet, really, when you think about it, all people are doing, for the most part, when they have these issues like you're talking about, is really everything else is the escape, because you're running away from this one issue that you need to deal with in order to move on. And the drugs, in fact, are the one thing that are going to allow you to stop doing the running. I mean, to reference this Rolling Stone piece that you'd share with me and that I'll share with our audience, I remember there was one story where there was a boy or a man now, but he had found his father, walked in on his father hanging in the garage, committed suicide, and he went up and he was, at the time, he was young and he couldn't hold him up, and he had this trip where he was able to face that and hold him up as a man, and because of the time shift and the way you can adjust your own perceptions, he was able to really hold his father and relive that moment in a much better way that allowed him to deal with it and move on. Yeah. And it's just, it's amazing.
Yeah. It's incredible stuff that has been happening for thousands of years. Thousands of years, all recorded history has reference to these things. And whether it was not necessarily MDMA, but things that change your consciousness to be able to view the world differently. Ayahuasca, psilocybin, mushrooms, like thousands and thousands of years, every civilization has had this thing. And you can go so deep as to say, this must be, you can get super hippy dippy and just be like, you know what, this is the concept of God. And if you think you didn't have, what people had to write about with limited language and through thousands of years of interpretation, and it's become what it's become, but you don't see God. Maybe you just understand shit on a different level, and then you can't process it. If you weren't intending to take mushrooms, but you were hungry and you ate mushrooms because you hadn't seen food in 3 days.
Yeah. Well, hey, maybe
then all of a sudden you're laying on the floor or on the ground looking at the sky like, holy shit.
Yeah.
What is this? Well, you're going to tell people about it, and you're going to realize it must have been the mushroom. And then over hundreds of years, it's so easy to see how this would happen and see how easily it's been taken out of our culture as the way to be a more healthy, kind human.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Well, it's just what makes me insane is, like you said, people have been doing this for thousands of years, and then arbitrarily
the hippies are going to get all our money. The hippies are going to figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's
shut them down.
Shut them all down. And also not only shut them down and make it legal, but to demonize it over and over again. To say if you use a drug, then you are now weak, or you are now escaping reality, or you are subhuman compared to the rest of us. And to find all this propaganda and we all remember the classic scene of the girl who did, I think it was like angel dust. It was a young Helen Hunt, I believe, who charged us at the third story window, going, "Ah!" Like that kind of crazy stuff. And even, it goes on today. You still see this being fought on an ongoing basis. I swear to God, they just brought back the "This is your brain on drugs," egg in the frying pan commercial. I saw it and I was like, number one, stupid, get a new goddamn thing. Yeah, it's so stupid.
And meanwhile, it's like it's absolutely the opposite of what happens. Like, the reason you get paranoid when you smoke weed is because you got some shit to deal with. You should be kind of paranoid. You know,
and because they made it illegal, so you're always looking over the shoulder for the man,
right? I mean, if you watch, there's a documentary called "Dying to Know," and it's about Timothy Leary and like the shit that he did in the '60s. The dude testified before Congress, and you see him describing what happened to him on in this case on LSD, and he's describing these insights. And this is like a respected professor in a suit talking about science to the panel, and he's talking, and then he explains basically like from his journal what he saw while he was in the psychedelic state, and he just loses everybody. They're just like, okay, get the fuck out of here, hippie.
All right, yeah, exactly. Thanks for wasting our time, you goofy goob.
And it's like, man, if you just listen to what the man said, he was on to an awakening like no other. And instead of like studying it and figuring it out and being like, holy shit, we can actually fix a lot of our problems here. It's hard to not say, man, the war machine shut that down. Yeah. Because it's not as profitable to have everybody be nice and realize they don't need all of the shit that we make, and that, the borders of these countries are arbitrary and like all of that shit. The human condition is lost because there's just so many numbers, so many big numbers and money at play that it gets crazy. And we're seeing it now more than ever because of the internet and because you can actually put the pieces together and shine a light on the bullshit in a lot of ways. And I hope, I have to be optimistic that we figure it out.
Without a doubt. The internet has changed everything. I mean, going back to this, these people, these senators or committee members that wouldn't listen to the doctor when he was sitting down there, it's this indoctrination into one way of thinking. And thank God for the internet, because no matter what, at this point, so many people are disconnecting from the main outlets for propaganda distribution when it comes to anti-drug groups, or be they based in government or be they just private groups that are advertising anti-drug paraphernalia or anti-drug propaganda. Now, so many people are disconnecting and they're getting away from the mainstream media platforms that, yes, the truth can come out. Now, granted, you can also find little niches of weird stuff to stick your head in the sand. But yeah, the proliferation of information on the web has made all of this possible to a point where it would have never happened before. They would have been shouted down, or they would have been prosecuted as, not hate speech, but I don't even know, inciting cultural warfare or something ridiculous like that. Yeah. And it's just, it's amazing to see.
That's why I like the, for one thing, like the military, guys that are coming to us and having this success, because that's not your typical psychedelic demographic. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they're like, holy shit. Like, I just thought, this is the party drug, or if it's marijuana, pot's for losers, or if it's, all these stereotypes have to go away. Because if you've done psychedelics, I mean, yes, there are people who fucking go crazy and take it every day and lose their shit. And people who are predisposed to psychotic episodes or schizophrenia, it's not for everybody. I'm not saying everybody should do drugs. I'm just saying, like, goddamn, like, it works really well for certain people. And if you've taken them, it's not something you want to do every day. Right. It's not an easy run, man. Like, even if you're there just to have fun with your buddies, it could go crazy. Yeah.
Well, and also they take the one person that snaps and does something ludicrous. You remember the bath salts thing they were all talking about? Oh my God, bath salts are the craziest thing ever. They're eating people's faces. And meanwhile, the guy's not even on what they said he's on, but they take that one outlier and they make it seem like it's the norm. Meanwhile, you have all these stories of people who their lives are being saved, or you have veterans, like 22 veterans kill themselves a day, or some crazy statistic like that, where you say how many veterans' lives are being saved by this simple treatment, which really, when you think about it, is incredibly simple compared to all of the other things that we're putting into place in lieu of this.
I should know my stats better, but I think it's somewhere. It's on the website. It's findable. Google it. But I think it was. I believe the quote is, the government basically gives the VA somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 billion a year to treat veterans. Mm-hmm. For us to get our therapy through, would cost a fraction of that. And second of all, once the therapy's like there, and we're envisioning that there will be psychedelic therapy centers where you go to a trained therapist pair. They administer the drug, you do the therapy there, almost like it's a center, it's a place to go.
Mm-hmm.
That is going to be so much cheaper and over in 3 months than a lifetime of whatever antidepressant is or isn't working for you. Not that they haven't helped people in the past, but man, this just is, it seems like if all else fails, why wouldn't you do this? It's literally at our disposal right now. So like the money is just crazy.
Yeah.
And we're saving those lives. People are getting their lives back. People are a father again. They can be a mother again. They can get their life back. And, the implications broad across the board of these treatments, whether it's MDMA or anything else, psilocybin, they'll probably get even better at administering it in the future. But like these war-torn areas with like Syria, where there's just people, a bomb goes off in your town, you're going to be fucked up.
Yeah. Without a doubt.
Like,
I mean, and we're the one dropping most of the bombs around the world. Let's be perfectly honest with ourselves.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Now, who would, by the way, are there allies that you have in the House or in the Senate that are actually willing to stand up and say, yes, this is a good thing? Like, because I'm trying to think, Ron Paul clearly would have been on your side, but I don't know of anybody else that I've heard of anyway actually stand up and say this is a good thing. Like there's the Marijuana Coalition. Great. Love that they're doing and they're saying what they're saying. But, who is there standing up for MDMA? Who's got the balls?
It's not their choice, first of all, yet. And I think drugs are always painted too black and white in any media outlet and any political spectrum. They're like, are you for it or against it, or let the states decide kind of thing. All of those are bullshit stances. What do you believe? Have you ever tried this? Do you have a family member that's tried this? Have you seen the children who have epileptic seizures go away because they get oil?
Yeah, that is a great example, by the way.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
But instead, they put the mom who gives the oil to the child with epilepsy in jail.
Yeah, it's crazy. And like you have alcohol is freely available, kills tons of people every year. Opiates are so bad that there's a new thing for treating the constipation caused by opioid addiction. They made a new drug for that. It was
on the Super Bowl, I remember.
Jesus Christ, man. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, painkillers have their place, but they're crazy overprescribed.
Yeah, and they're and worse for you overall, again, along a longer period of time as well, because America takes more pills than anybody. So you think, okay, we've got how many Americans taking pills every day, all the time for various pains, various elements, or various, like, I myself, I took, pills for antidepressant, maybe some MDMA once a month for 3 months, and wouldn't have to worry about that anymore. Face these demons that make me so funny.
Yeah, exactly, man. It's nutty, dude. It makes me crazy. That's why I'm so like passionate about it and talking about it any chance I get. Like it's everybody in their life must know somebody who has something. It'd be a rare person who has survived this long without something, and hopefully it's nothing too bad, but everybody is dealing with shit. And, for some people it gets so crippling, and there's no hope for them if they don't have the right outlets. And I think we should be trying all the possible tools.
Well, even more so now in the era of social media, where everybody is posting this, it's like this bifurcated reality that they live in, and they've done, there's been studies upon studies about this, is the more you're on social media, the more depressed you are and the more issues crop up because you're dealing with an inferiority complex. You're dealing with complex about your job and your spouse and your life choices, because everybody else is just posting this one way track, this sunny side of the street look at their lives, and everybody looking about it. If your life's not that great, you're getting more suicidal by the day. So, hey, if this drug's going to help people deal with some issues that are probably going to crop up from social media, if nothing else, and bullying, and stop them from suicide. Now, granted, I know that's a little bit dumber of an example, but I'm just saying. More people are getting depressed from social media. So, hey, bring it on out here.
It's another thing. It's another thing to fuck with us, right? So,
right, exactly.
There's a lot of that. So, yeah, why wouldn't you have all the tools available? Doctors should feel free to say, hey, have you thought about maybe this thing? It apparently works, and then take the things that we know don't work
Right.
and are actually really bad, and not push them, not give them any due either. I mean, if you're super libertarian about it, they shouldn't be regulating. I know they shouldn't be regulating any of that shit, right?
Exactly.
It's the pursuit of happiness, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
So
and now,
leave me the fuck alone.
Yeah, damn well right, man. And somebody, it was interesting. I wish I could remember who said this earlier in the earlier podcast, but they're saying there should be a bill that simply all it is that you have control over your own body. And you can put whatever you want in your own body, and that's it. And that's, that would go a long way in something like this, where people, because who knows what's going to happen if people that are wanting to do this, take this treatment, which exists right now, I guess in, underground pathways, but they can still be arrested. They can still go to jail, which is why it's so vital that we either get it above board, which is probably the easier path right now, or like you're saying, legalize it all. And that doesn't mean you can't still have centers, because most people are not just going to be like, well, I heard this thing works.
You can't just make pure MDMA. Like, it's not easy to make pure MDMA, exactly. Right? So the plants are one thing, but the chemical derived ones, like, you don't want like 80%. I think it's decent. You want the real shit,
right? So you're still going to go to a center and go to a professional, and you're still going to get professional help.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So what else can we? Anything else you want to add on this topic?
Just that people should go check out psychedelicscience.org. We're having a huge conference April 19th to the 24th in Oakland. Space is limited. I am performing there on the comedy banquet with some real powerhouses.
All right.
Insane. It's insane. Duncan Trussell, Shane Moss, Adrian Earhart, who we know and love, Adam Strauss, Juliana Razzi. So there's Rachel Kahn. There's I don't know what I'm doing on this lineup. It's insane.
That is awesome, man. Well, I will definitely link to that as well in the show notes, guys. So please check that out. You will enjoy Matt's comedy. I promise you that. And tell you what, let's take a quick commercial break and then come back, hit a couple quick topics to wrap up the show.
Hey guys, this is Roger Paxton, and if you're fed up with the government running every single aspect of your life, but you're not listening to the Lava Flow podcast yet, then what's wrong with you? Check us out at thelavaflow.com, or just go back to sucking up to the government. The Lava Flow podcast, striking the root every single episode.
This is Chris Spangle, and I am the host of We Are Libertarians, which you can find in iTunes, Google Play, or at wearelibertarians.com. We are a podcast that brings you all of the irreverence that modern politics deserves by examining current events from a libertarian perspective. So please, check us out at wearelibertarians.com.
Hey everyone, the Johnny Rocket Launchpad is Liberty. Each week we strive to bring you the best guests in talk radio. The Johnny Rocket Launchpad delivers weekly interviews of noteworthy politicians, experts, and activists. The Johnny Rocket Launchpad is bringing the party to the Libertarian Party and launching ideas in your direction. Check us out at johnnyrocketlaunchpad.com, and you can hear me, Kurt Nelson, and the beautiful Heather Nixon talk about the ideas of liberty, rock and roll.
Welcome back, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that commercial for our fellow podcasters in Liberty. Now, I am back with a friend of mine, the one and the only Matt Neal, who's he's a writer right here in LA. He's a comedian. He is also on the board of directors for the MAPS Public Benefit Corporation. And we were just talking about fascinating stuff involving MDMA and treatments, but we're going to segue off of that into talking about a couple things that just happened. The top of the bill of which is hashtag Randy Pants, good old Rand Paul, introduced a bill today that looks at ceasing all of the shipments of arms and money and training to various organizations overseas in however many countries we're now currently bombing or arming people in 1520. It's called the Stop Arming Terrorists Act. And this act was put forth in conjunction with a bill from Tulsi Gabbard, and that was called H.R. 608. But essentially what this bill will do is it'll make it illegal for Congress or anybody else to supply arms to, let's say you're supplying arms to Al-Qaeda because they're fighting ISIS. But of course, we also trained ISIS before when they were helping to fight Assad in Syria, all that back and forth. So, Matt, we were talking earlier about dropping bombs all over the damn place. What do you think about this bill? What do you say? Yay or nay? Are we endangering our own well-being as a nation by hampering our efforts to give people guns?
Man, I don't know. How do you know who you're giving them to is a terrorist today or not? Aren't we leaving a lot of shit everywhere we go as well? Like, it doesn't feel like it's, I don't know, man.
Well, I think, see, the way I'm looking at it is it's got to be a good thing. So here's the way I'm going to look at it. Even if we don't know who's a terrorist and who isn't a terrorist, if we err on the side of maybe that group's a terrorist group, then at least they don't have any guns that they can then shoot us with. Why are we
giving away guns to anybody?
It seems like they are, right? They did that whole Fast and the Furious thing where they were shipping guns across the border to Mexico and giving them to, I think, anybody who lined up on a street corner.
I mean, there's so many guns, man. Like, I don't know. This is couldn't we just send the army or send?
No,
like if it's that important to us, no, I don't want to send troops. But I'm saying, like, we need to be more judicious in using arms, whether it's the actual guns themselves or the humans that are using the guns.
Right.
Or
how
drones.
Or just drones. Yeah, drones. Like I didn't know if we were going to get to this or not, but it's tying right into it. So let's talk about this. So in addition, Rand Paul, he's got the Stop Arming Terrorist Act. Now, Rand Paul also memorably stood up and filibustered the use of drones under the Obama administration. And I don't know if you caught that, but it was a really impressive stance from, it was him. I think Ted Cruz stood up and talked a little bit. But, it was an amazing stance against basically just bombing people across the world. And especially when half of them didn't have any sort of official condemnation from the courts. We blew up an American citizen, and Trump in his very first strike overseas had drone bombs in Yemen and killed an 8-year-old girl. That was also an American citizen. So
like, why? What I want to know is if whatever it is that if we're going to this extreme, what are we being protected from that they're afraid to tell us about? Why don't we have the story of what are we actually doing? What are we solving here? Because it seems to me, and this is very naive, obviously, but it seems to me that the folks that were blowing up couldn't get here anyway.
Right.
Like, I don't understand why we're there when you have Detroit.
Exactly.
Exactly. And I don't get it. And if they're protecting us, and it's that sort of like, you want us on that wall, that whole like speech out of A Few Good Men, maybe, but please, can you explain what it is? Because it seems to me that the idea of America is a really good one. The idea of it as conceived, the freedom of it is good. The going around and deciding that everybody else has to be that is kind of weird. Mm-hmm. I don't get that. And then is it true that if we let them proliferate, it must be true, or a gigantic bunch of bullshit that just so many people believe that if you allow fundamentalists in any shape or form in this day and age to unite, they will pillage and kill. Like, I don't know if that's real. Well, because I can't imagine anymore being able to accept, like, if the Christians all of a sudden just were like, you know what, let's bring back that whole Inquisition thing. Mm-hmm. People would be like, get the fuck out of here. Right. Like that. No, we figured out that that's not a good idea.
Well, the thing is, all of our interactions over there just make it easier anyway, because you look at it, you say, okay, they did have some of this violence in these extremist groups, but the extremist groups probably were told, hey, get the hell out of here, because there weren't enough of them. By our going over there and constantly drone bombing them or arming these various groups with weapons that then overthrow the government and become the crazy Islamist, secular governments that we're worried about in the first place, all they're doing is making it so much easier for other extremists to be invented. I mean, hell, if somebody came in with a drone and dropped a bomb on my house, I'm probably more likely to be willing to be persuaded by some crazy Islamic militant to join up than if you didn't drop a bomb on my house and explode my dog and my wife.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
but
it's hard to say, like, I understand it, but at the same time, like, I don't know enough about any other religion like that to imagine. I mean, when you're indoctrinated into things, like, it's real tough when they get you when you're a little kid. Like, you believe that shit. And it takes a lot of mental ability to break out of it and be like, you know what, I think this is bullshit. But if you have no reinforcer that, A, it might be bullshit because they tell you the reason the sky just blew up is because of the words in this book, and you're like, okay, I guess that's right. It's like, man, can information save this? Can access to information save this?
Without a doubt, yes.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I really hope
yes.
so.
And that's what China's so worried about. That's why China cracks down on the internet so often, is because they know that the biggest danger to China is not our weapons. That's why China's military is still 1/6 the size of ours. The biggest threat to China is information and culture exports, because you look to China now. It's funny. You look at all the movies that are out, right? I just saw Independence Day. Not intentionally. It was on a plane, by the way. I would never pay to see it, but the new Independence Day came out. And of course, they've got American pilot as the lead, 2 American pilots as the lead. Who's the third, pilot they really focus on? She's Chinese girl, hot Chinese chick. And, of course, they're collaborating with China. They have a huge cutaway scene of the aliens attacking China and Chinese people going, oh, no, because why? Because China is such a huge consumer of American culture. So that is the way that we're going to win all of these wars. It's not by dropping bombs. It's if you've got the cultural
information.
Yeah, information. Yeah. Seeing, wow,
well, yes, that was Arrival too.
Yeah.
Arrival. Yeah. That's interesting. I hope we can do it, man. I mean, Arrival was very optimistic in that, and I'm kind of an optimistic dude. I like that too, like, because I got kids, and I got to be optimistic.
Yeah,
but it's hard to look at the shit. Like, does ISIS know it's ISIS? Like, do they or are they just like, hey, all these guys hate those motherfuckers that keep bombing us. Let's do some shit, and they just get crazy.
I don't know. I think, there's they're also all hopped up on drugs, is what I read too, from these reports that came out. So they may be,
what kind of drugs?
They're like amphetamines for the most part.
Mm.
Yeah. So a lot of the soldiers that escaped, like these kid soldiers, half the way they indoctrinate them is that they give them these amphetamines and they get them all fired up all the time. And so you're either cracked out or you're coming down. So your mind is very pliable in that state. And then they just jack you up again and say, okay, go out and shoot, go kill, and they go do it.
It's so scary. Like, we're so lucky to be here. And so, like, I can't even imagine. The shit they go through. Like, it's so cushy to have this and to pontificate on what they should do. But it's like, all right, we've had the time to have the leisure to think about shit for a minute without getting bombed, not worrying about what we have to eat.
Somebody overthrowing our dictator that's in charge.
So it's like, we've had the time to think, and we figured a couple things out. Here they are. And like, goddamn, like it seems like this should be solvable with information and some, like, but there's crazy people. Like, look at North Korea. Insane. Fucking insane. But that one guy, any dictator for that matter, is no match for everybody that knows they're full of shit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so how close are we to everybody sort of understanding that, like, maybe our government might be full of shit sometimes?
And they are. Well, that's what I was thinking when you were saying, like, there's crazy people all over the place. I was thinking to myself, yes, there's the crazy people. There's like the Kim Jong-uns of the world, and there's the crazy leaders of the Islamic countries and these, these madmen that are ruling nations. Duarte over in the Philippines. You've got these madmen, and then you say, okay, but are they any crazier than the psychopaths in our own country that are continuing to push this constant state of war and have no problem murdering people at the drop of a hat? A faceless masses in other countries, like the amount of millions of people killed in like the Iraq wars, and all these wars we've been fighting. Those people are psychopaths as well.
But I want a reason, like the real reason, like if
military industrial complex, my friend.
I got you, but I would rather them say it's money or it's oil whatever. We have to have it, you dummies. You don't understand.
That's not
you don't understand that if we don't have oil, do you know what happens? Like,
right.
If that's a real thing, tell me. Because it seems to me like what happens is we figure something else out.
Yeah,
that's what Americans do.
Exactly.
Like, can we power this shit with wind? Do you know how pissed I was when I found out, and this is, again, totally oversimplification, but like a nuclear power plant is basically a really kind of fancy for the 70s gigantic steam engine.
Yeah,
it's like a really really efficient steam engine that we can't turn off.
Yep, totally.
How fucking dumb is that? Like,
well, I just read that Australia is going to build an island in the middle of the ocean just for wind power.
Dude, we have wind, water, and sun.
It'll happen. It's one of those things where it comes down to for example, Australia, this piece I was just reading, they are to the point now where actually it is cheaper for them to look at using solar, wind, and water as opposed to gas, because it's gotten to that point for their country, which is, if you're an environmentalist, which you all are on some level, it's great. But that's what happens is when it comes to the point where you say, this is the most logical way to move forward, this is the most efficient way to move forward, then it'll happen.
Remember Todd Glass had that bit about, I hope it's not giving away like a special or something, but he was saying, why are we bitching about the millennials? And he's like, people, they don't know how to make horseshoes anymore either. They figured out cars. It's like, yeah, we don't need to burn this shit anymore to power things. Obviously, like there's zero gas in the Tesla.
Yeah,
we figured it out.
But the Tesla is not affordable to everyone. That's the thing.
But
that's the key.
All I'm saying is we figured it out. We figured it out. Here you go. Yeah. We figured it out. Okay, well, we need electricity. How do we get that? Well, we figured that out too. So let's modernize instead of keep like all of these things that made so much money the old way are clawing to keep making the money the old way, even though it's dumb.
Well, it's been that way throughout history, the government. That's where the government needs to get out of the way. And I say that in regards to all energies. I despise energy subsidies for anything. I don't like the government being involved in pushing forward solar or wind or water at the expense of oil and gas. I don't agree with oil and gas being subsidized the way they are. The free market, in my opinion, will be able to figure this thing out much better and much faster than anything else, because that's what's going to dictate it. If people can afford, people are going to be able to afford or not afford whatever this energy is, and that's going to dictate what moves forward. I wish we had a porno industry. Like, you remember the whole thing about the beta versus VHS and why VHS ended up as the winner was because the free market decided it because porno was on VHS. The porno industry went, you know what, we're going to go with VHS. And everybody said, oh, well, you know what, we got to jerk off. We're going to go with VHS. That's what we need. We need something that makes us want to jerk off so bad that we're going to go with a new energy source. But let the free market decide it.
I tend to agree.
Yeah.
I like the regulation that comes in and says, the free market can decide what our energy source is. And if that energy source creates waste, you can't put the waste in our water. I like that.
Right. With property rights, you shouldn't be able to. You should be able to sue their balls off.
Yeah.
And
so
that's the way it should
like
be.
the restrictions. Like I don't know enough about the EPA, but I like the idea of, hey, we can't let some crazy fucker that figures out to save money, I also destroy this area.
Oh, totally.
He can't win.
Well,
I like that.
There was a proposal. Damn it. And I'm like spacing on these proposals. I've not had much sleep. And also, as some people know, I also had a horrible weekend where I dropped my goddamn cell phone down a hole in the ice in a lake. Anyway, so my head's a little frazzled. But the point being that there was somebody who's trying to put forward this argument, which I agree with wholeheartedly, that the EPA is missing the mark, especially when it comes to like pollution of water. And what happens is that they have these companies and they make these guarantees, say, oh, no, we'll clean it up. But the problem is they never actually enforce them, or they can only enforce a small amount of it because the company goes bankrupt or whatever else. Instead of having this kind of this fund in place to say, okay, it's prohibitive. You better not do this, or else all this money that's put aside, guaranteed money, will then go to clean up and assuring that people's property is not damaged, stuff like that. So there's, I agree that there are ways in which you can prevent this, but again, for me, it all kind of under property rights and being able to go after companies that are polluting without anybody else getting it away or any protections extended to them by the state or the government, that kind of thing.
They just shouldn't be a dick. You shouldn't be a dick. Like, if you know you're fucking things up for anybody else, you shouldn't do it. Like, it's pretty simple.
Exactly.
Like,
have you thought of running for office?
Oh my God.
On the Don't Be a Dick campaign?
Jesus, it's so simple.
Dude, I know. You won me over. All right. So let's talk. Okay. So just to wrap it up, get to all the way back to the beginning. I'm a fan of the Rand Paul bill. It talks to different organizations to determine who would not be a terrorist moving forward, by the way, because you mentioned that. So you're talking to the different intelligence committees, and they then would make a recommendation to say, okay, looking forward 5 years, are these people going to be dangerous or not? Of course, as I said, I don't think we should be arming anybody anyway. So
expiring bullets.
That's a great idea.
Here you go. You got a 2-year on these bullets, then they don't work anymore.
I like it. They've got that. If my dog crap bags can decompose, the Army can figure out a way to make bullets. You know what? Yeah. I love that idea. Let's pitch that. Let's pitch that idea up to our company.
Then you can, it's possible to track everything these days. We could be like, nope, we're going to blow up, the gun disintegrates in a year. Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, I guarantee you can there's got to be a polymer out there, like some sort of alloy that'll break down after a couple of years.
You just 3D print that shit. And,
it'll just shake apart after
just like you can remote wipe your phone. Just turn off the gun.
Don't
Sorry,
say
buddy.
Phone. No, I finally got a new phone. I don't have a case for it though, which means I'm going to drop it because how they make phones very slippery on the side, so that you definitely are going to drop it.
Running around naked with that phone, you're crazy.
Well, you know what? I don't have the case on it. Like I said, it's slippery. I'm just going to grease it up, put it up my asshole. That'll keep it safe.
Oh.
All right, one more thing, and then we'll finish it up. So this I got to talk about. New York is looking to scrap a literacy test that teachers are supposed to be taking. It is a basic literacy test. And the reason they're going to get rid of it is because they need to hire more diverse teachers, and black teachers and Hispanic teachers fail the test at a much higher rate than white candidates for teaching positions do. They said 41% of black candidates and 46% of Hispanics passed, compared to 64% of white candidates. What do you think about that, Matt?
I think, how about if you can't pass the test, you can't be a teacher?
Novel
How about
concept.
It doesn't matter what you look like?
Yeah, right?
Passing, by the way, in this article is 64% of white candidates. That's not that good either.
No, it's still not great. It shows you that there's not a lot of quality teachers.
We're hiring a D student to teach kids.
Yeah.
Like, the whole teaching thing is so broken.
Yep.
It's so broken. Like,
and you wonder why the state of education is what it is. But again, it's like this state mandated diversity initiative. And you go, yeah, like you're saying, if they can't do it, they can't do it. You can't say you have to hire this many people in the face of pure facts like that. It's crazy to say, no, you have to hire somebody that is vastly inferior than the other candidate. I'm not saying that in a racist way, by the way. I'm not saying that in a bell curve kind of way, but just in general, if you have one candidate that is terrible and can't pass the test, you should not be forced to hire him. All you're doing is hurting the next generation of kids to get a political point.
No, I am in favor of public education, but I want it to be done well. They should literally double teacher salaries and have every one of them should love being there.
I don't know. Even if you double them, I don't know if you're going to get people that love being there necessarily. Although you would have a lot more people interested.
Tenure, double it, no tenure, and you double their salary, no tenure, and you got to be good. You got to love being there. If you don't love being there, get the fuck out.
I agree with no tenure, but I think
the kids deserve a good education with some. Do you realize how much different you can get a kid to learn if they actually give a shit? And school is so broken anyway. Like, we're training factory workers and we don't have factories. So
I know they're
crazy.
Being indoctrinated in a certain way of thinking, as we talked about a little earlier in the show. I mean, look, my mom was a teacher for like 40 years. She was a second grade teacher. She really liked her job, which is great.
Yeah.
But it's like that's where I think the free market, and this is why I was a big defender of DeVos, and even though not her personally necessarily, but the concept behind opening it up and having a voucher system and a free market schooling system, is that my problem with public education is kind of what you're talking about, where these teachers' salaries are capped because there's no competition. And if you have competition with these schools, like let's say you've got vouchers where they've got charter schools, and you can have teachers where they can hire the better teachers, then they get more people to the schools, they can pay more, etc. And that forces competition to raise up in the other schools, or the other schools perform better because they have less students in the class. Like, how many students do we have in California per classroom? It's like 45.
California's really, really a mess. But it's all kind of a mess. It really is. And again, we're not listening to data. We're not listening to science. We're allowing a system that was put in place like in the 30s.
Oh,
maybe even sooner.
Yeah, the Department of Education, I think, came around in the 70s. But
I mean, they formed, like, the way education works, like, came out of
the basic system. Yeah, the building blocks are in place. Yeah.
It's like, Jesus, like, we figured out that it works different. And, like, you can't put, like, I have 2 little kids. Like, you can't take a 6-year-old boy and a 6-year-old girl and put them in the same class. They're different. They learn different. They want to do different things. They pick up different shit. And it's just crazy. And yet we put them together. And half the time is spent like keeping the boys from freaking out and running around the room because they want to beat on things. And, like the girls, it hurts everybody. We're just, but we know the information. We don't use it. We don't change it.
That's where you got you got the voucher system. You can have a school that does that, and you can put your kids in that school because that's what they offer.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not against it. Like, if they're not going to use the money to actually examine the bigger picture. And I mean, I know plenty of teachers, like I have these conversations with them, and the best ones, the ones that really care about their kids and their students, they have these same ideas, and they can't fight through the system they're a part of. And sometimes it's the parents who are crazy too. Like, oh yeah, you've seen that cartoon with like it's like a before and after, where it says like the parents on one side in the 1960s like yelling at the kid for being bad in school.
Oh yeah,
now it's like they're yelling at the teacher, and it's like,
no one's baby can be bad. It's got to be someone else's fault. In all things in life, it's got to be someone else's fault.
But they're huge problems to wrestle with, but it's like we do have more information now. We have access to more information. We have to apply it faster, learn the lessons faster, and put them in place without so much bullshit. Like, some things are just true. Like, I like how fast, sort of in comparison to other things, how fast some progress happened. Like, I feel like from women's rights to civil rights to gay marriage, were accelerated in the grand scheme of things. And we need to be on the right side of history faster. Like, why are we still talking about drugs being illegal? Like, it's dumb. It's dumb. Let's move forward. Right. Like, we figured that one out. End of problem. The internet figured it out. We've come to these conclusions. Let's just move past it.
Right. And you just look at all of the things it impacts. If we just got on the right side of the drug war, got rid of the war on drugs, you have so many health benefits. You'd have so many less people in prison. I mean, America's got the biggest prison, the highest rate of incarceration of any country in the world. It's insane to think about. The most people in jail. Get rid of the war on drugs. Get on the right side of this argument.
There's people that were around for too long without the internet. I mean, people that were around for like 50 years, 60 years, no internet, that choose not to evolve in the fact that it's here or ignore that it's here, that just can't have a say anymore. Like, it shouldn't be. And that's probably a good percentage of the people that are in current seats in Congress and stuff. So until that rolls over, with people who realize that you can't just say shit, that people can fact check it.
Yeah.
And like, we can have, like, you can't bullshit anymore. Like, you can look it all up. It's all there.
Yep.
So when people realize that you can't just bullshit anymore, and they're not in the power decision making, it gets pretty simple. But it's almost like we gotta wait for that wave to go out. And our president is right in there, 70 something years old, and has lived in a very strange bubble his entire life.
We need to get, like you said, crazy. You need to get different thinking people in there. I'll give Trump this. He's definitely lived in a specific bubble, but he does operate differently from any other president I've ever seen, and that is refreshing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's not
and entertaining.
But I mean, it's just a weird, I mean, Joe Rogan talks about this all the time, how the president job is really weird. We've kind of evolved past it. And it's like, yeah, I kind of agree. Like, it is kind of dumb. Like, we can have a diplomat guy who can speak really well and put on a good, like, be our representative, much like you would want your CEO to represent your company well. And
we need a monarch, is what you're saying.
No,
we need a constitutional monarchy.
Maybe. I don't know.
Just like England, England's got to go.
I like the parliament idea. I like the idea of hashing shit out. Like,
I love parliament.
Best idea in the room.
Watching
like,
parliament is better than watching TV, man. They go at it, and it is delicious. Eat it up.
Yeah.
Speaking of delicious, man, you're delicious. Breakfast. I'm gonna wrap this show up by telling you that,
brother. All right.
So hold on, guys. Let me give us some call outs here. Please do visit maps.org. You can get all the information about this amazing organization, the work that they're doing that is truly life changing. Also, check out psychedelicscience.org, where Matt will be performing. That should be an awesome show.
It's a big conference, by the way, about psychedelic science, like 4 days.
Yeah, I did mention that. It is a big conference.
Yeah. A lot of scientists.
Workshops. It's got a banquet.
Yeah.
Is it wait, do I say cruise? It's got a cruise?
There's a cruise. There's a comedy banquet, all to benefit and increase the science and the conversations and the collaboration around psychedelic science. It's awesome.
That is amazing. I wish I could get up there. I don't think I can. But that would be awesome. I'll think about it. I'll give it some thought. Maybe while on some shrooms, convince me. So thank you, man, for being here so much. And guys, I encourage you, like I said, check out Psychedelic Science, check out MAPS. Also, while you're at it, check us out on Twitter at Lions of Liberty. Join the Facebook forum. We've got Lions of Liberty forum. Just type it on in there. You'll pop right up. If you don't look like a psychopath, we will let you on in. And I want to remind you again, check out our t-shirts, lionsofliberty.store. Support us. We have exclusive content, including our conspiracy show, which just came out on Saturday. Sadly, I was not a part of that. I would have loved to have talked about all the crazy conspiracies. But that is some exclusive content we have for people that subscribe and support our podcast. lionsofliberty.com/support.
Oh,
so
what?
Thing,
Maps,
what?
Maps podcast. The Maps podcast is launching this month.
Oh, nice.
Stay tuned. Go find it on iTunes. It'll be out. I think the first episode's coming out in like a week. So yeah,
Beauty.
Excited about that. Yeah,
there you go. Add it to your lineup, guys. Maybe we'll try to cross promote a little bit further when that comes out. Get some more people from Maps on the show. It's always an entertaining conversation.
Indeed.
Yeah. So guys, from me, from Matt, Neal, and from Electric Libertyland, always stay plugged in to Liberty.